From the heart of Dubai, where tomorrow is being built today, to the world. Welcome to the CTO Show with Mehmet. Here, we redefine technology and reimagine possibilities. With Mehmet, delve into the riveting realms of AI, cybersecurity, and digital technology. Experience the thrilling highs and lows of startups. Immerse yourself in the spirit of entrepreneurship and witness the future of business innovation being written in real time. Now, without further ado, let's tune in and explore the future.
Hello and welcome back to a new episode of the CTO Show with Mehmet. Today, I'm very pleased joining me from the West Coast in the US, West Stringfellow. West, the way I love to do it, as I was telling you before we start the recording, is usually I keep it to my guests to tell us a little bit more about themselves, their background, kind of like how they come to where they are today. So the floor is yours.
Yeah. Thanks so much for having me on the show. I really appreciate it. So I'm West Stringfellow. Nice to meet everyone in the audience. Currently, I'm founder and CEO of Howdo, where I help entrepreneurs accelerate and help businesses innovate. And I got to where I am by doing that myself. So I started in 1997 in technology and was my first startup, and just kind of slowly for 7 years worked my way from the server closet to a product manager and joined Amazon in 2004. Was recruited because I was a big nerd for book metadata, and in the time, that was one of their primary categories. And worked my way up through Amazon, helped launch their first billable web service, which launched AWS, and then helped launch their Prime Video product. If you've ever watched streaming video, we launched the first version. And then after Amazon, I had some pretty awesome wins there. Typically, we developed some of the first passive authentication paradigms, so like device fingerprinting, big machine learning models that help reduce fraud. And that helped me get a role as Visa's head of innovation for Europe. And then I went from there to PayPal, where I led innovation, and then ultimately developed my own startup that was acquired by Target and became the VP of innovation at Target. And then for the last 8 years, I've been building Howdo and helping folks innovate and accelerate their own companies.
Wow, what like a career, I would say, West, and really something very, very impressive. So, I'm always, curious to understand like what attracted you actually to that area, and this specialization that you have done, especially, around AI and, of course, through innovating also as well. Was there like something special that you felt, okay, like this is something I'm passionate about, or maybe, or it was just like, the way how things progress naturally. So how that happened, West?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. Largely by accident. So the first thing that I learned in my career is that if I fix problems in my own job, I tended to make more money or get promoted faster. So a great example is the first big problem I ever fixed was that I was legal internship, 1997, helping a startup law firm figure out how to scale. And I just built a super little simple file management system. And I went from being an unpaid legal intern to being a highly paid technology consultant. And I was like, this is, way better. And so the next internship I got, same thing. I just fixed a simple problem, got more money. And then I started to realize that, back in 1997, no one knew how to use technology. It was very easy to do very impressive things with extremely limited resources. And I was very fortunate to ride that technology wave. And so I just dove in as deep as I could and kept learning on the job, and ultimately got to a place like Amazon, which really, really values people who are trying to push technology forward. Amazon, when I was hired to run the North American media marketplace, which is books, CDs, things like that. And I went from managing, about 30 million in revenue in 2003 to over 400 million in 2004. And when we think about like managing something that big, you'd think it'd be a pretty complicated process in terms of lots of teams and lots of bureaucracy and meetings. It was just me. And a bunch of data. And the way Amazon runs their business is that you use the data to determine what to do, and then you use the technology to employ the data to make things move. And it's very different from traditional businesses. And that was kind of a big insight for me, in that, with the right data, most business becomes fairly obvious. And ever since then, it's just been a real passion of mine to go into these big companies like Visa and Target and PayPal and help them see that they have an incredible amount of data, and data is extremely valuable. And that if they use it correctly, managing the business, growing the business, reducing costs, better engaging customers, appealing to investors to get more money for growth, all those things become very easy if they understand their data and can use it to run the business. And so it just kind of fell into it. But then once I understood it, it's just impossible to unsee. Once I saw how Amazon ran their business, I realized that, this type of business is going to win, and it requires process, it requires data. And then ultimately that, when you get to any scale, that implies machine learning.
That's really fantastic. Now, something you mentioned, Wes, now triggered me to ask this question. Actually, I prepared for that, but just because you mentioned about the data. So, and I think this is common even between startups and big companies at the same time. So we have to take decisions which are like data driven, right? And at the same time, especially we see it like, you say, okay, like I have this gut feeling that, I need to go and innovate in this, and I need to go and create the next solution to solve like this problem. So from your experience doing it like multiple times, like when is the right approach to take, like, for example, listening to what the gut feeling is telling you, and versus no, like I need to really actually look at the data that I have in my hand, and if I'm gonna go and do something, I'm gonna take this data and build on top of the analysis, the interpretation of the data that I have. So how do you balance these kinds of like dilemma, I would say?
That's a great question. Honestly, I struggle with that every day, and I think everyone does, because there's the way that I delineate it is there are known knowns, so things that we know, and then there's obviously the array of unknowns, things we know we don't know, and things we wish we knew, and things like that. And in a real simple way, if we have an extraordinary amount of data that's statistically significant, it can lead us to a primary indicator like a growth vector or a cost reduction vector, then I think it's important to use the data. But in a lot of times, especially when innovating, everything I just said implies ceteris paribus, that everything remains equal. And the reality is, like, especially with something like AI, everything changes very rapidly when we start to have like hyperscale LLMs. And so I think it depends on the context. If you're working with a very stable technical context, a very stable business, customer, competition environment, it's real important to use data to validate your thinking. But if you've been in that market for a long time, your intuition is probably going to be faster than analysis. If you're dealing with a highly dynamic market, customer, or competition, I find intuition to be less effective. And especially if you're dealing with a highly dynamic technology, I find intuition to be very challenging. And I tend to rely more on data. And then, the weird irony there is in dynamic markets, we tend to have less data, but it's more important to rely on the indicators that we do have because it reduces risks. And for me, whenever I think about investing, innovation is just another form of investment. That's all it is, right? It's a very long-term investment in technology and people, and ultimately customers and capital. And so like the investment decision has to be made with the least amount of risk. And the more data that we have, I've found, especially presenting to like Fortune 50 boards, Wall Street, basically, the more data we have, the more money we get, and the easier it is to buy long-term permission to really invest. And that's if we're going to innovate, that's what it takes. It's long-term permission to put a lot of money in a direction that a lot of people may not believe in yet.
Right. And when it comes to, is there like any kind of frameworks or like maybe some, best practices that usually companies they utilize to build on top of that? So because you mentioned you presenting, for example, to Fortune 50 companies, and we're talking about really serious business. So probably we need to get really prepared, and we need to use like a certain framework or best practices to make sure that also the audience these executives are understanding what we are trying to do. So, and I know like you've done it multiple times again, Wes. So what can you share about that? Like what are like kind of a secret sauce, if I want to put it this way, for presenting this to the board, especially when we talk about large companies?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's contextual. I have found that the secret sauce is very dependent upon the company, but if I was to try and find the secret sauce for each company, I start by thinking of the CEO as my customer. And then I look at what the CEO cares about, and generally it's the board. And so then I try to understand the board as a customer as well. And I go meet with them and I understand what motivates them and what they want to see in terms of the next steps for the company and the next steps for the revenue, the strategy, the technology, the customer, the market positioning, all those things. From the framework that I can develop through those conversations, I then create a pitch, basically. Just like you would pitch venture capitalists, I basically pitch the board ideas, my team and I do. And we do a lot of research to figure out specifically how we can tie what we're pitching to the specific needs and the specific concerns of the board members, of the C-suite, so all the C-level people, and anyone else who's a primary decision maker. I've found that they generally boil down to 5 simple things. It's grow revenue, decrease costs, mitigate risks, delight customers, and empower employees. If you do those 5 things well, businesses generally survive. Some businesses, the more ambitious ones, have a 6th, and that's innovate, which is move all of those things forward faster. And like Amazon, for example. So it's generally those things.
I think it can be explained better, I would say, West. Now, one, I would say one of the topics that also comes to mind, especially when it comes to innovation, and you mentioned also large companies and startups. So now it comes to the mindset that we need to have. So what kind of mindset, whether you are in a startup or you are like an executive, you need to build on, so you can have these large, you mentioned investment, right? So in the previous question, you said like it's like an investment. So what we need to do, so really we can get from, and I know like when I was preparing, you mentioned like it's like a $0 to $1 billion, right, return. So what kind of mindset we're talking about here, West?
Yeah, the foundational mindset for all investment innovation right now, especially, is a growth mindset. So the idea that with practice we get better at things. I think that's true individually, because the discipline of pitching is a skill in and of itself, and there's a lot of rejection before we get good at it. But I also think it's especially true to try and carry that perspective into the presentation, into the boardroom, into whatever investor meeting you're having, because everything right now is very much in an evolutionary posture. The way the economy is positioned, the way politics is working right now, the way society is moving, all this stuff's changing. So if we have a growth mindset, change is an opportunity. If we have a fixed mindset where we look at change and see that it's scary and don't want to participate in it, then change is risk. And so for investors, it's real important to have a growth mindset, especially if we're in a leadership position in a company. I think a lot of people can look outside of the world and see technology and whatever the heck else is going on, feel scared about it. And I think it's more important to look at the opportunities therein. And that's just the foundation on top of a growth mindset. I think it's extremely important right now to be customer obsessed. The only thing that existing businesses have as a durable competitive advantage right now is the customer relationship. New technologies are going to be disintermediating capabilities that people thought have been the foundation of their business. And so the customer relationship is the durable asset. So being customer obsessed, and then working backwards from customer needs using data. So validating everything that they're saying with data, and then employing that data to build your strategy, which means that we have to continuously learn. And that's the final mindset, is always learning, especially right now. And I think a lot of that full circle goes back to a growth mindset. A lot of companies have a very strong perception of who their customer is and what their customer wants. And that's very dynamic right now. So the faster that we can learn from the customer, use data to define the customer, learn how to update our business, the faster we grow.
Right. Now, during, your, clarifications and explanation about this, we mentioned AI multiple times, Wes. And I want a little bit now to, of course, it's not because the hot topic, but it's something we have it in our hands now. So first, let me start with this. How the current technology that we have available for us, the AI technology, how much have you seen it, kind of a catalyst to organizations that, they need the AI now, right? But at the same time, maybe they are not sure where to put it and where they can innovate. So from your experience, if someone wants to implement an AI strategy, right? So where they should start, like how they can plan and then start implementing, these strategies, so they can make sure they will get, the benefits that, of course, AI is promising every single company today to have.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think the place to start is high frequency processes. So first off, the place to start is where you have process and data. Like if you have, those are the fundamentals in terms of the inputs into AI. And I think AI, I say AI because that's what everyone's saying. I still think of it as machine learning, and machine learning is, as it's just pattern recognition at scale. And so the more that we can define the pattern, the better the machine's going to work. And so, a lot of companies haven't defined their processes. They don't understand their data. Their data may not be in a format that machines can learn from. Their processes may not be instrumented so that they're collecting data, but it starts there, process and data. If you have good processes that are well-defined and consistent, and you're producing good data from those processes, then, that's the best opportunity for machine learning to automate right now. And the way that I see the capital flow working is, if, you automate, you take the savings from that automation, you reinvest it in growth, or you reinvest it in more savings, and that creates a positive virtuous circle with capital. And that's how companies are ultimately going to scale with AI. And so specifically with the LLMs that folks are excited about right now, the biggest implementation areas are, again, pattern and data. And for text, which is what an LLM is proficient at, it's customer service, marketing, anything that uses language in a pattern process, in a repetitive, uses the same language consistently, or uses deviations for small standard deviations of that language consistently. I think some folks think that AI is going to come in and simply automate business. We're a long way from that. But the most exciting opportunities are going to come from right now, getting the processes in place, the data in place, and the teams trained, so that the teams can start adapting to the changes that are coming. A lot of companies haven't changed in a long time, and that is often the most uncomfortable part of AI. I often say, what we're going through right now with AI is not a technology problem. It's a people problem. Most companies aren't going to adapt to AI simply because the people don't want to. They don't want to learn. They don't want to change what they're doing. And, there might be some truth to that, and they may be comfortable there. But I would suggest that if we're not changing right now, that we should be uncomfortable. Entropy is increasing, and we should be embracing it.
Absolutely. I'm very happy, and it's kind of a coincidence maybe. So the episode, and by the time this is aired, so the other episode that I recorded just yesterday, it's aired now, and it's with Mike Tedesco. So, like, I am happy that you brought this before, because yesterday I was like, when I was, commenting on the answer. So I mentioned something which you just said, Wes, which again, I like to repeat things which are valuable, which you just mentioned. So people have this, intention to think that AI is like the magic wand that it will solve all the problem. The other thing, and I'm happy because, for me, and we discussed this even with some guests previously, it's not like against, naming AI as AI, artificial intelligence, but it's exactly what you mentioned. It's machine learning, and machine learning is about to teach the machine, which is the computer, how to spot some patterns. And then, I mean, it's fascinating, of course. LLMs are fascinating, no doubt, because they take these patterns and they transform. And I'm saying transform because it comes from the famous paper of at Google. So that transform these patterns into some new form of text, image, video, whatever it is. So I'm happy you brought this was like again here now today. And this is, it triggers again the questions like, when should we really go and seek a AI, LLM, whatever technology it is, versus maybe thinking of what are other emerging technologies are available to us today, or maybe they are emerging, and then we can go utilize these technologies to have real innovation that can maybe increase our revenue, increase our customer satisfaction. And, this is what the digital transformation that started is all about, is how we can increase revenues, reduce cost, increase customer satisfaction and retention, right? So what's your take on this?
I agree with you. I think that the emerging technology landscape is fascinating, and it has been though since 1997, in my experience. like we've had so many incredible emerging technologies that businesses haven't engaged in. Most businesses haven't even performed their digital transformation. They're still on mainframes, or they have highly distributed computer networks. They haven't figured out how to consolidate their data. We were automating at Amazon. We were automating processes in 2005, and we were doing that at scale. So to the tune of hundreds of millions of transactions a day. And most businesses haven't figured out how to collect the data or define the process to automate. And so, if people are thinking that AI is going to transform their business, but they're not even caught up to 2005, it's more likely that someone else who uses AI is going to replace their business. And it's not just AI, to your point, it's all the emerging technologies that have been around for a long time. I think, the cloud computing, which is something we or big data, we kind of lost track of using those words, but that's where the horsepower is, but that horsepower, those engines come from having robust processes, and defining a process could be as simple as Excel, or building an access database, but no one in small businesses is doing that. A lot of the medium-sized businesses aren't doing that. And so in terms of the emerging technologies, I tend to try to get people to use the existing technologies that have proven themselves. If they're there and they're proficient, then I think things like blockchain are fascinating. I think there's a lot of potential for customer value in crypto, not in the currency exchange format, but more in just the tokenizing and gamifying most experiences for customers. And I think that most businesses, in terms of what they need to do, they're trying to grow and they're trying to cut costs. That's pretty simple. Right. Most businesses aren't using technology proficiently to do those things. They're using humans who have very strong beliefs, and those beliefs inform patterns of behavior, and those patterns of behavior are probably invisible. And so again, I just think it starts with trying to train people how to identify what's going on in the first instance. And that's non-technical. Once they understand how to understand where they are, then technology gets involved. And almost always it's not very impressive. It's stuff like Excel spreadsheets and simple databases. And once that's mastered, then people can start getting into more advanced things, like just taking that same data they used in Excel and automating it. And once they get to automation, that's where advanced emerging technologies become very compelling. That's where the real utility of technology takes over, because when we think about the purpose of technology, it's to increase productivity. And if we have the ability to automate, that's when productivity starts to actually become a real thing.
Right. So let's on just as a follow-up question on this. Do you think that some of the folks out there still think that adopting a technology is kind of a additional cost on the organization versus that, oh, if we adopt this technology, actually we might be able to, I don't know, create a new line of products, create new services, so that becomes like a new income, and especially with the AI now, like the opportunities looks endless, right? So why do you think that still sometimes we have like, I'm not sure how much is the percentage, but people think like if we get this, we're gonna be spending money, we will not see the ROI. Versus if actually they think about from a different perspective, maybe they will have, I don't know, like additional stream of income. And maybe you can share some examples regarding that.
Yeah, no, that is the fundamental calculus or math that depending upon the complexity of the problem, but that is the fundamental pitch that I always make to the boards is, look, if we spend this money, we're going to be able to get more of whatever it is we're trying to get more of. It could be more savings, more growth, more customers, whatever. And the basis for that investment is always in evidence. So there are two types of investments you're making. One is like, hey, we're catching up, and the other is we're leading. If you're catching up, I look at market comps. So I look at what is out there that's a comparable circumstance, maybe not in my industry, but a comparable circumstance where people have invested in this technology. They've seen the productivity gains, they've seen the growth, the savings, whatever. And we have therefore been able to witness what that technology transformation did to that company. A great example is Amazon. So when I was at Amazon, as I said, we automated some processes back in 2005. And then the reason I got hired at Visa is when I was talking to them about their authentication processes, in 2007, they took their data that was more than 6 months old, they put it on a tape reel, and they drove it to a nuclear silo. And so it was impossible to get data more than 6 months old without having to fully reconstitute the database. And when I asked why, they said because they didn't see that it was useful. So, that coming from Amazon, where we track everything literally and have full visibility into every hover state, click, every movement of a book, everything, to Visa, that's like, no, we should just throw that away after 6 months. To convince Visa to use the data, I just pointed it at Amazon. I was like, why are they able to grow with so much less money than you? Why are they able to grow with so much less people than you? Why are they growing so quickly? Well, let's show you how they use data so that they grow. And it took a long time. It wasn't a very short conversation, but once they understood it, and then it's kind of using the market comp to start the conversation, and then using their own data to demonstrate value. Once we were able to demonstrate value by using data, then they really started to understand it. And most business people are rational. They want evidence. And so if there's a market comp out there, the first evidence is, look, someone else is doing it. The second evidence has to be a quick win. So we're going to take a little bit of the data. We're going to demonstrate that we can add value with it, or we're going to take a little bit of the technology. We can demonstrate that we can add value with it. And once we demonstrate a tiny amount of value, we get a little bit more money. Then we demonstrate value again, then we get a lot more money. And then we just keep repeating that cycle. And so, in 4 companies now, I've gone from no funding to over 30 million a year in funding. And I've just done that by demonstrating consistently that you're going to give me $1 million, I'm going to come back with 2. You're going to give me 5, I'm going to come back with 10. And I just keep doing that until I get to the point where we're actually a team that's contributing value at scale. And then, so that's one. The other is if you're pioneering, way harder, way harder. I've built some things that like digital video at Amazon, Prime Video, if you've ever watched video on Amazon, but sure, we failed. There are books written about that failure. It was terrible. And it's because we didn't understand the technology. No one did. We were literally physically popping chips out of computers and putting new chips in that had just been manufactured so that we could encode the video in a new codec that no one had ever used before. Like we were doing all kinds of stuff with CDNs that hadn't been tried at scale. We were building software for HD to be transmitted over the internet and then put on your, like, none of that stuff had ever been done, and most of it didn't work the first time. And, you know, that we had Jeff Bezos's permission to fail. And so, you know, 2006, when we launched digital video, no one was watching digital video, no one, except for people who were like, you know, streaming stuff from BitTorrent or Pirate Bay or whatever. When people actually started to watch digital videos, 2012, 2014, 2016, you know, by 2020, Amazon was the largest Hollywood studio in America, like bigger than Hollywood. And so the you know, 2006 to 2020, that's an incredible amount of time to invest in one direction. And they did, and that's how they win. Same with web services. When I remember, when I got to Amazon, I had this thing. I wanted this data. I really wanted. I was the largest marketplace seller. I took over the marketplace. They asked what I, you know, as the seller, what could we have done to make your life easier? And I said, I want this data. Here's how I would have wanted this data. Here's how I would have used this data. Blah blah blah. And that became that little conversation became one of Amazon's first billable web services. When we launched that, I remember telling all my friends, like, yeah, oh my God, dude, we're selling data via an API. Like, this is so cool. And my friends were like, that is the dumbest thing. That doesn't make, and who's going to do that? Like, why would anyone ever want to do that? And I'm like, also, you can do processing or put your data up here. And people are like, that is so stupid. Like, why would I do that? I have a server rack over here. I don't need any of that. That's AWS. You know, it took, Google didn't launch a web service for 2.5 years because they didn't think that it was a viable market. So, like, you know, AWS produces like $1 trillion in market value for Amazon. And that was a long-term bet again. But what it took for them was vision. They knew that it worked internally. They'd done the little micro tests. There's a lot of failures on those little micro tests, but they knew that technology was trending in a specific direction, and they decided to invest long-term in that direction. So, you know, if you're trying to make a long-term bet, and you don't have billions of dollars. I try to look at people who are making long-term bets that do have billions of dollars and are credible at making long-term bets. And I use Amazon as the benchmark there. Amazon has consistently picked the right technology, the right growth vector, and won. And so, you know, if we're a startup, like for me, I'm still a startup at this point. Like, I look at where Amazon's investing in technology and I just say Control C, Control V. You know, like, I want to invest where they're investing, because if they've picked a lane, it's probably backed by a lot of data and a lot of smart people. So if we're big, invest billions, takes a lot of time. If we're small, look at people who are investing billions and are credible and copy them.
Just, you know, on that, Wes, it's very important, and, you know, is to see the vision and the full picture. So, and I'm sure, like, also you have done it in every role you've been in, because as someone, and you did like in product management, right? So in as a product manager or chief product manager sometime, or like, you need to convince a bunch of people to come with you and, you know, take this, I would say, leap of faith. Like, guys, maybe not everyone is agreeing with what we are trying to build now, but we're going to do it. So what kind of team you want with you, West, when you venture in such road?
Problem solvers. People who are willing to literally solve problems. And that sounds kind of obvious, but in my experience, there are people who talk about the desire to solve problems, and then you give them, you know, $1 million problem that they need to solve, and they quickly decide it's not for them. And what I mean by that is, you know, when you solve a problem, you're dealing with, I don't know, all the time. Like, in your head, in my head, every day when I wake up, the thing that I'm trying to build right now, you know, I've been self-funding and building this for 7 years, right? And it's a really complicated piece of technology, and that's why it's taking so long. And the number of times in a day I say I don't know is exhausting. And I'm constantly having to answer questions that I've never even thought of, or that really, in many instances, I can't find any evidence of other people thinking of. And, you know, that I love working with people who are willing to do that, because it's very uncomfortable. And there's a great example. There's this colleague of mine, Priya, who I worked with, and I've hired her multiple times because she's just the best problem solver. And, I'd give her really, really gnarly, either operational problems, like we need to figure out this process, or organizational problems, like at eBay. I think they had 20 something companies, and I was the head of platform, and the companies weren't working together, and I needed them to work together. And so I just told her, hey, look, I will give you all the air cover you need. I'll give you all the resources you need. Please figure out how we can work together, because this is just not working. And, she would go and solve the operational process. She would go and solve the organizational problem. She was also a brilliant technologist. She was one of the best at PayPal. She was in their leadership program for technology leaders. And I could ask her to go solve like a really difficult architecture challenge. Like one of the things that we had to do is move PayPal's authentication from 3 seconds to under 300 milliseconds. It's extraordinary efficiency that we had to extract from an old platform. And, she could dive into some really specific nuts and bolts nuance of that migration and be able to hold a very competent conversation with the chief architect of PayPal. And so, the ability for someone to kind of be a polyglot and the problem solver, if they can do that, then they can run.
West, one thing, because also this is, I think, in my opinion, I'm curious, honestly, but I think it will be beneficial for the audience as well. So you've done this, I mean, not into one, let's call it vertical or sector. So you've done this like multiple places. So you've done this at Amazon. You've done this, which is like Amazon. And Amazon, you did it on the video entertainment side, I would say, and on the AWS side, which is like infrastructure. Visa, it's a finance. And then I know like you were also at Rosetta Stone at some stage, PayPal, right? And BigCommerce. So you and then, at Target, which is kind of a retail. So how you were able to, because what I have seen, and again, because I worked for some companies, I used to interact with a lot with product managers and people who love the product management part and, leading products and innovation. So I see them like kind of, they go and specialize, but for you, it's like kind of you've been able to apply the same framework or the same concepts and, make it success in different, verticals. What's the, what made it work for you, I would say?
I always go back to first principles, and I try to make everything really simple. And I find that with people and businesses, it can be very simple. It's just understanding the people, what's motivating them. And then there's on Howdo.com, the website that I'm building right now, the platform that I'm building, I've open sourced all my processes. So how I get to first principles, I've all the questions that I ask, the processes that I run, they're for free literally on Howdo.com. And it's really about, I say data and process probably way too much in this podcast. I apologize. But I go into each company. I try to understand the executives, what they care about, both in terms of the business, but also as humans. And then I try to understand the board or the investors, and similarly what they care about. And then I try to really understand my team. Like I've always found the best knowledge comes from the people who already are in the business. Like I don't come in with a bunch of big ideas. Sometimes I guess that's not true. A couple of times people have either bought stuff that I've like bought my patents, or I've sold ideas into the businesses and gone and built them. But the ability to get stuff done, the ability to actually navigate the organization, the great ideas that are sitting on the shelf that if we just did that idea, it would move the business forward in some way. That's all there. And so, as soon as I understand the leadership and I understand the investors, then I really try to understand the team and figure out the people who are the change makers, figure out the people who have incredible capabilities, incredible intelligence and ideas. And no one's really allowed them to let themselves go, to actually go do the things that they want to do. And so, it's understanding what's above me, managing that, understanding the folks working with me and empowering them. And, I found once I get the data in place in my head where I understand, okay, this is what motivates leadership. This is what motivates my team. Here's how I can manage leadership. Here's how I can empower them with the ability to give me money, which is ultimately what I want. I want to get my money so that I can build my stuff. Then I try to build my team, right? And when I say get me money, I'm just talking about the budget. I just want to get the budget for my team so that we can start making progress. Because as soon as I have budget, as soon as we can make progress, everything starts taking care of itself. And so then in terms of execution, I started as a technologist and self-trained, so I'm terrible at it. But I really try to get the smallest amount of capital that I need to show the largest amount of value. And most businesses don't have an efficiency leverage like that. A lot of people go in there asking for a ton of money. Same with investors, they go ask for a ton of money. And even when I talk to venture capitalists, I'm like, look, I'll ask you for $10 million, but I'm not going to use it until we talk about how I'm going to use it. I'm going to use 100,000 and I'm going to show you that I should spend $1 million. Then I'm going to spend $1 million and I'm going to show you that I should spend $3 million. And I kind of ladder up that way. And by laddering up that way, by the time I get to the real volume of capital, I can run. My team can run, which is the most important thing. And so it's understand the folks who are at the top, understand the teams that I can help with, empower, listening to the teams, and then spending every waking hour trying to get the capital to empower the team so we could do what they think and do what the vision requires.
I love this approach because also I'm biased a little bit west, and when I see someone like yourself who you go by the first principles, right? So which is how we can get this done in a better way than people are doing it currently, right? Regardless of what it is. So sometimes, because I think this is by nature kind of, and by experience you start to get it. Because what happens is if you see something which you feel it can be done, in a better way, you start to have this itch, okay, how I can do this better, even if you're not maybe specialized in this, but as you said, like problem solvers, right? So this is what you start to look at, how I can solve this problem. And you start to ask people, hey, tell me can we do this? Can we do that? And I love really this approach because it reflects, in my opinion, every one of us should be like this. This is the ultimate scenario for humanity. All of us, we are on the edge of making everything better all the time. But it's you need that first step, and then you need to have, of course, the leadership so people can follow you and start to okay, he's doing something different. Let's follow. Which is, I think this is kind of also human nature, because you said people are have the rationale, right? They need to understand why we are doing the change and so on. So 100% on this, but I loved, this approach. So Wes, as we are coming almost to an end, I want you to, tell me, especially because we talked about startups as well. So for startups to really be able to differentiate themselves, especially in this crowded market we have today, what do you think their messaging in terms of innovation should be? So first, they can succeed. Second, they can secure funding from VCs, investors in general.
Yeah, it's tough right now because everyone's talking about AI, and it's real easy. It's never been easier to build a startup. So there's a lot of competition. I think the best thing to say is I know my customer. And either I know them because I am my customer and I'm solving my own problem, and therefore I'm the expert who could do it, or I have spent so much time with the customer that I literally dream about their problems. I empathize with them so specifically that I understand them better than anyone. If investors hear that, they understand in the first instance that you're probably going to be able to build something that the customer identifies with, and that's the foundation of product market fit. I think the second thing is that there's a team of people who are doing that. When I built a Techstars startup accelerator, after Target acquired my startup, I became the VP of innovation. And then I built a Techstars startup accelerator, brought dozens of startups into Target and helped them grow. The fun thing that I learned from Techstars is that as they do due diligence, when they figure out who to invest in, they look simply at two things. And the first is the team. And they do a deep dive there. Are these problem solvers? Are these resilient people? Do they identify with the customer? And are they going to learn quickly? If so, is their market big and growing? So it's real simple. If you can identify, empathize with your customer, you have a team of people who shares your empathy, you're all problem solvers, you're all working hard, and you're doing that in a market that's growing and already large. And large can be relative, but more than $3 billion is kind of a good place to start with your market. That is a real opportunity for investment in an early stage. And I don't think it needs to be more complicated than that. I think a lot of people kind of get lost in trying to figure out some sort of magic, but it's pretty simple.
And I think West also, one thing I know, usually, whether it's Techstars or like any other of these big organizations that do the acceleration and incubation. So they look also for people or like founders, as you said. So they look for the team, and they look specifically if you actually understand the market better than anyone else and the problem, not the solution, because you need to be able to relate. Okay, like for example, sometimes I get some founders and I try to kind of do a rehearsal with them before they go actually. And so I ask them one simple question: why you want to solve this problem actually? And
That's
why
a great question.
no, and what I want to understand, at least for me, because I try to put myself in kind of two shoes, let me say like this. So I put myself in as an investor, and I put myself as the customer who gonna buy the service or the product, and I try to understand if the founders are themselves aware of the market that they are in, so they understand the dynamics. They understand, or they can build the empathy also with their customers, because if they can't build the empathy, and to your point, now it's very easy, and thanks to the open AIs and the Anthropics and the Google of the world, who allowed everyone now to go and say, hey, I'm building an AI that can do, I don't know, better.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So there's plenty of it. I'm not saying that they're gonna fail, don't get me wrong, but I mean, to me, if I'm just stuffing the word AI, or at some stage, you remember maybe West, so people were coming like, I have blockchain,
Yes.
something technology. At some stage, they used to like every now and then we see like whatever is emerging and hot now, so we're gonna put that in. Software defined was, because I come from infrastructure background, I have the software defined for I don't know what, or I have the next generation. It's like another about marketing. It's nice to do marketing, but to your point, like I really love the way you have put it. Um, Wes, like really, I think we discussed plenty of things today, and I think we need to do more episodes. But if
I'd
you
love to.
want
Thank
to,
you. Yeah.
yeah, if you want to, leave the audience with kind of final words of wisdom, plus where they can get in touch with you and know more about you and the work you do.
Yeah, I'd say there's never been a better time to build a business than right now. I honestly think this is the best time in human history to build a business. And if we think about what the technology could do, might be one of the last times to build a big business, because once AI exists, it's going to be a very powerful tool for business building. So I think it's time to run. And where the folks want to find me, I'm on Howdo and howdo.com, as well on LinkedIn. But I would say for folks out there who are looking to build their own thing, howdo.com has free resources. There's no catch. I'm not charging anything.
That's great. And for the audience, if you are listening on your favorite podcasting application, so you can find the links in the show notes. If you're watching this on YouTube, you find that on the description. West, I really, really, really enjoyed the conversation with you today. Like a lot of energy, which is I love, and I'm passionate myself also about innovation. And if you see, I say the podcast main goal is to get insights, idea, and innovation, because I'm a big believer that this is how we can get the world a better place than we found it. So
yeah.
so it's a great things that you discussed with us today, and thank you for the time. And this is for the audience. If you just discovered this podcast by luck, thank you for passing by. I hope you enjoyed. If you did so, please help us, give us a thumb up, share it, and tell your friends about this podcast. And if you are one of the people who keep coming back, thank you for doing so. And thank you for all your support and encouragement. And thank you also for all the engagement you do with me, whether offline or on my LinkedIn. Thank you very much for that. And as I say always, thank you for tuning in. We will be again in a new episode very soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Hit that subscribe button, share the show with your tech-savvy friends and fellow entrepreneurs, and leave us a review on your favorite podcast app. Your support means the world to us.